Well, hi, I'm Sue Atkins. I'm the Associate Director of Employer Relations at Tufts and part of the employer team. And we're excited to start off a new employer highlight series with our friends from Meta, formerly Facebook. So I want to do some quick introductions to everyone. Bernice Au is our university recruiter as part of the team there, working with early talent. So we're pleased to have her joining us today and our liaison to Facebook formally. And we also have Paul Chang, who is a jumbo class of 2015 and engineering manager at Meta. And we'll be talking more about kind of the inside advice to students around thinking about being candidates at Meta. So we're thanking both of you for joining us today and sharing your insights and wisdom with our Tufts community.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, of course. And we'll have an informal conversation, but we'll dive into some questions and we'll have each of you kind of answer to our student audience. So please describe your role at Meta and kind of what brought you to the organization in the first place.
Yeah, so as Sue mentioned, I'm a university recruiter for Tufts. I've previously been at multiple recruiting coordinator roles with different tech companies. I actually joined Meta as a contractor almost 5 years ago. I started off with a couple of positions in the recruiting ops space before just recently transitioning into university recruiting space just a couple of months ago.
Great. So new to the company and liking it so far, obviously.
Yep.
Fantastic. How about you, Paul?
Hey, I started back in 2015 when I graduated from Tufts. Prior to starting at Meta, I interned at a small startup. Then I went to IBM, and then I went to Microsoft, and those were my internships. For full-time, I was deciding between a couple of places. Chose pretty arbitrarily, to be honest, but ending up here and have been here for the last 6-7 years now, and so clearly enjoy it. The teams that I went to and from within Meta, I first started on a team that is giving out free internet access to the world, and it's part of our emerging market growth strategy at the company. And that was actually the first 6 years of my time here. I recently moved to a more foundational role in building out the metaverse. So we're bringing the company closer, and I'm in charge of building some of the foundations for it.
Well, that's fantastic. Great. And what kind of brought you there? What was the initial interest to coming to Facebook at the time and now Meta? What was the draw to you?
Probably the biggest factor for me when I was deciding at the time, not having known anything about what full-time really means and what a full-time job entails. The biggest differential between Meta, Facebook at the time, and other companies was I felt the interview process was very supportive. I always felt that and I still feel that, and I see it now with the cultures that we exude in the company. But the biggest factor was every single interviewer was very supportive of me. So instead of asking me questions trying to intentionally make me go off course, they're asking me questions trying to support me, and it's almost like a collaboration to try to get to the final result and answer. That to me was very indicative of what type of company I would be joining, and it's something that we can go into in the rest of this interview about the culture here and the things that differentiate it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds like it was a very positive experience, which has kept you there as much as brought you there.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the current culture? Kind of any changes, obviously, from move from Facebook to Meta, ultimately the same organization, and what you want to share with our students around the culture there.
Yeah, I can't speak specifically into engineering culture, which Paul will go into later on, but more broadly speaking, I don't think with the name rebrand that our culture has changed at all. We did just announce some of our new values in support to support building the metaverse. And I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with it, but I'll just quickly list them off again and explain a little bit into what each of those mean. So move fast, which was one of our values before, is just continuing to move in a fast pace, enable us to build more things and to learn faster. Second is focus on long-term impact. So instead of focusing on temporary or short-term wins, to have that impact be more on an extended basis. Build awesome things. So shipping products that aren't just good, but all inspiring. Living in the future. So building a future of distributed work and being early adopters of future products. Being direct and respectful for your colleagues, creating culture where we are straightforward and willing to have those hard conversations. And the last one is metamates, and me, which essentially means being good stewards of our company and mission.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. And so how do you kind of learn about those areas when you start? Is that something that is very outward facing?
Yeah, I think
candidates.
Yeah, I think regardless of the role that you'll be in, you'll definitely on day one see how it incorporates it into your day-to-day job and function. In terms of candidate facing, I'm like Paul alluded, with our recruiting processes, we're moving pretty quickly. So that's one that stands out to me right now.
Mm-hmm. Always hiring as quickly as possible. Always
be recruiting.
How about you, Paul, in terms of the culture and your experience so far?
Yeah, I just want to tack on to those values that she mentioned. I think it's not just presented to you the first day that you join. It's something that you see on a day-to-day throughout your entire work, and it's not something that needs to be explicitly told because you see it in front of you, lived out by every single person, and as a result, you want to contribute to that culture as well. So it's definitely something that's built by the entire, by every single person at the company, regardless of what role you're at. And it's pretty obvious to see when it's so prevalent in the culture. I just want to add a couple of things that are specific to engineering, but also not really specific to engineering, because I think this is also probably pretty similar in every other role, but it's definitely a big piece of what keeps me around at this company. One of the important things is that we're very bottoms up here. Every single person, regardless of whether you're first day on the job to 10 years on the job, and whatever role, whatever level, whether you're leadership or whether you're an IC, individual contributor, every single person is not only encouraged on a daily basis, but actually it's expected for you to help come up with ideas and drive overall direction for your team, your org, your company, etc. And so that's a really, really critical part of this company. That's what makes this company so great and what makes this company move forward. And the second thing that's really important is not only are you encouraged to come up with ideas, you're also encouraged to support other people. So paying it forward is a really big piece of this company that I think I honestly can't stress enough how big it is at this company. There will be a lot of other companies in instances where you're trying to accomplish your project and it depends on another technology stack or another team or another set of individuals that have a dependency for your specific thing, for your specific goal. And that is only possible if those people will support you and will enable you. And from my experience, what I've seen consistently throughout the last 6-7 years is I've worked with over like 50 to 100 teams by now, like different teams for my projects. And consistently, anytime I need help on any one of my projects for anything, I can reach out to anyone and I don't even know who they are and they don't know who I am. And they will spend at least 30 minutes to an hour to help me with my project on my thing. It doesn't benefit them in any way. It's just a pay it forward mentality in which I've also in parallel helped other people on other teams that I don't know. I've spent hours of my time helping them. And so that type of mentality is a company-wide thing that enables us to make a lot of impact, which is one of the goals that we had Bernice outlined. I want to just mention two more things. One is we're also very open and transparent here. So every single thing that all decision making is as broad as possible. So we have as many people as possible make decisions on the same thing, and this couldn't be more true from a every single day perspective. And this kind of builds into the bottoms up culture where if it's very open and transparent, it enables a bottoms up place where, hey, people are empowered to speak up about, hey, there might be a team health issue here, or there might be a better idea here that we can work on. As long as we're doing it constructively and not bringing people down, this becomes a really good environment to work in. The last one that I want to stress that is very specific to engineering is that this company is very engineering first, and it has been and it will continue to be built on the fact that we've had technology advancements and novel ideas from the technology sector that we've built giant pillars upon. Nothing in this company has been possible without those technology advancements, and so we always pride ourselves in reaching that bleeding edge of what is possible with technology, and what are different advancements that we can make in order to move this company into more and more spaces that we think we can be very useful to the world in. So that's something that's super critical, and that spans a bunch of different areas, like from all the way from like VR, AR, AI, blockchain, hardware, networking advancements, software advancements, infra advancements. We're constantly pushing the pace, and that cannot be understated, because I think that's one of the things that all of those other things can be true. Like, you can have a bottoms up culture that's very supportive and open, but if you guys aren't working on something that is inspiring, then what is everyone really working on, right? So I think all these things together really make a cohesive culture that has kept me staying around, and certainly has made a lot of people very happy.
No, it sounds great. And also in terms of staying up on kind of new technologies, do you feel like that's something that's helped you continue to grow professionally in your technical skills, as far as new advancements?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a day that I go without feeling like there's something to grow and that there's something that I have grown. And I think probably the same is for Bernice and for every single function across the company. We are incentivized to grow in a healthy way, and I think that's a really important factor when determining where you want to, what place you want to work for 40 hours a week, week over week for the next how many years.
And it also keeps you interested in staying in your role, because you can evolve as a professional, right, over time, which I think is great. You don't feel stagnant. You're constantly pushing yourself to learn new things and skills, which I think is a real asset to any organization to be able to do that over time. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just one last addition.
No.
I want to add that I think the skills that you take away here are not just our skills that are industry-wide. So being able to break into specific industries at a global level, this company will set you up with those skills to be able to do so. Whether it's any of those technologies or any technology that you end up going into, you will end up understanding what the bleeding edge of the entire world is focused on. And that makes you a subject matter expert, and that makes you able to change the world at a global pace. And that's understated, I think.
And that's a big jumbo philosophy too from Tufts, right? Is preparing graduates for a mission focused position whatever industry you're in or not. I think that's a big part of kind of the Tufts preparation and mindset too, which is great to hear that aligns. Obviously we have students that are interested in being, a meta hire at the end of their senior year and also in the future. What kind of preparation would you recommend for both the behavioral interview and the technical interview, which we know are different things to prepare for. And Bernice, I know this is something that you work with candidates on a daily basis. Kind of what are your things to set up a candidate for success in those realms?
Yeah, I can start off with the technical aspect first. I can't stress enough to practice, 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 and practice again. We do provide candidates with all resources and prep docs to successfully pass through your interviews. So please don't skip any of them. They are really helpful. And I would say to also do mock interviews, practice coding questions with a timer, is our interviews are 45 minutes long, and we tend to ask 1 to 2 coding questions during that duration. And another thing is brush up on your data structures and algorithms. I know those might be courses that you're not familiar with now, and there may be like earlier in your undergrad or master's program, but that is something that our interviews evaluate against them. And then on the behavioral side, communication. So practicing talking out loud how you solve a problem. Like even if you don't get the solution right, we still want to understand how your thought process is, how you landed on that solution. And also it gives us opportunities for us to provide feedback in real time as well.
No, that's some great advice. That's awesome.
One
go ahead.
more thing. So great resources in terms of mock interviews. They are completely free and they don't impact your candidacy at all. But it's PRAMP, P-R-A-M-P. If that is mock interviews with other developers in real time. And then the other one is LeetCode that we highly recommend in terms of practicing coding questions.
Oh, that's great. And are those included in the resources?
I think LeetCode is, I'll have to double check on PRAMP, but all of these are completely free. And I feel like all recruiting, like just vouch and encourage everyone to hop on there, but I will double check if it's included.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to include the resources at the end of this post as well, so students can access some of the great things that you pulled together for us. So that's fantastic. What about from your perspective, Paul, in terms of the preparation, both from the behavioral and technical side?
Yeah, I want to +1 what Bernie said on communicating. That's such a huge one. So practice communicating, practice speaking out your thoughts, practice talking to another individual about a specific problem. Because as I mentioned before, interviewers like me or anyone else at the company, we are very helpful. We want you to get the question right. And so we'll work with you. If there's something that's on your mind that's bothering you, we can talk it through. That's 100% what we're trained to do. And so that will very much work to your advantage rather than going quiet for multiple minutes. If you do want time to think for yourself, you can just say, hey, I need some time to think, and then we'll leave you alone. But at least that level of communication is so important and so key. I want to talk about a few specific things for technical interviews. Definitely practice end-to-end live simulations. So like what end-to-end here means, we interview you for around 45 minutes, do a 45-minute long interview, read out the question, go through all the edge cases, try to figure out what the high-level algorithm should be, whether they're faster ones, what the trade-offs are, reason about them in real time, hopefully with another person, talk out the problem set, then actually code it live end to end. Don't just pseudocode, write a real one that you would do in an interview, and then walk through line by line and prove that it's right. Go through with different edge cases to show that, hey, you've thought through all these different cases and you've considered them. And then debug whenever there's any problem. These are all things that are expected of you. And if you're not going to be able to do that if you can't do that during practice, then you probably won't do it at the best caliber when you're actually in the interview. So I couldn't stress that enough. I think doing 2 mock interviews is way more helpful than looking through 10 problems on LeetCode and then solving them in your head. It is important to be able to do both. Like you want to be able to answer a lot of different questions at a variety. but you do want to practice that end-to-end scenario, because some people trip up on the communication aspect, and that's always tough to see. Cool. So that's one on the
Yeah,
technical.
okay,
Oh yeah.
go ahead. I was gonna say, oh
Just
yeah,
go.
go ahead. I'll ask after.
Okay. On behavioral, I think the most important things for those interviews is you have to prepare. Don't just come into these interviews empty-handed. Come with actual examples of where you've overcome certain situations and where you feel like you've been challenged the most. We're not trying to see where you've succeeded. We're actually trying to see where you've challenged and where you've been challenged and why you think those are challenging and what you did in order to get out of those challenges. And it's okay if you didn't tackle them in the best way. Sometimes, and most of the times, when you're introduced with a challenge, you don't solve it in the best way. And the best thing to do is have some look back and be able to say, hey, here are some of the learnings going forward into it. But you have to have some of those prepared going into the interview, or else it's very hard to come up with those examples live. So that's my biggest advice on any behavioral. And then last, just overall advice is for anyone that's nervous, just know that interviewers have been in your spot. Like I have been in your spot, being in the interviewee. I've also been the interviewer, and just know that as long as you've done practice enough, you're not trying to prove anything to anyone. Just be yourself, show your known skills. You don't have to try to overperform. Just be exactly who you are, and the interviewer knows what it's like being in your spot. So just know that we're not out to eat you alive. We're very much just trying to talk and have a conversation.
Yeah, showing your authentic self, right, in the interview, and knowing your skills and knowing your abilities. And is there anything about your preparation or your Tufts experience that you feel really helped you when you think about that interview for that first role at Meta? What anything come to mind that you felt like was the most helpful to you as you're talking to folks who are still at Tufts?
I personally don't think I was prepared super well, but I think these specific things will help you be way more prepared than I ever was to interview. Probably the most helpful things that I actually did do was the live end-to-end mock interviews. If I were to do it again, I would definitely do a lot more of those for sure. But I think those are the ones that prepared me the most. On top of doing a lot of interviews, so I took interviews at companies that I didn't particularly want to join at the time, but I did it so that way I can gain experience in being in these live scenarios. So that might be another way to go about it.
Yeah, practice. Yeah. Practice makes perfect, right? In terms of the experience. And kind of jumping off from that, what skills and competencies are you seeking most often in the candidates for the roles that you have open right now? And Paul, you have kind of the starting question for that.
Yeah. So for the interview itself, we're definitely looking to make sure that you're able to communicate and reason about trade-offs verbally, or in whatever way you can express yourself the best. Maybe it's on the live code pad, whether it's on the screen to draw architecture designs. I think at the end of the day, you need to be able to communicate what you're thinking, what the options you're looking at, and why you think one thing over another in various situations. If you aren't able to convey those messages, it'll be very hard for you to succeed in a workplace where you are meant to collaborate, you are meant to work on challenging, tough problems and solve them collaboratively. And so that's a super important skill that we're looking at. And specifically, we're looking at your ability to talk about technical things. And so those are all the skills that you're learning specifically from your classes right now. And you're reasoning about different architectures whenever you're working on a paired programming exercise. Those are all projects where you need to be talking to your partner and coming up with a common design. That's what the interview is simulating. So that's one thing on the interview, what we're looking for. Once you're actually at the company, some things we're looking for is still that for sure from the technical standpoint. We're also looking for proactivity and ability to take initiative. So jumping into problems, championing ideas, being able to proactively resolve problems, being able to go forward and take a step forward and make progress regardless and persevere through challenges. Those are all important aspects on the day-to-day job on top of increasing your technical ability. So it's both technical ability and then proactivity and perseverance. I think those are some of the skills that we really value on the job right now. And I truly think that although it's very true that there are many classes that you will take that do not one-to-one translate with an exact project that you will work on in the future, this underlying skill set very much will translate one-to-one. Whenever I look back on most of the courses that I've taken, I don't use specific implementation details, but I do use the underlying skills gathered from them to be able to solve similar problems and different problem spaces in the work. So it does translate pretty well. Even if you don't see it in the first few years, over time you will end up seeing the connection.
No, that's great. How about for you, Bernice?
More from a broader sense. So I would say for both of, just thinking out loud right now. So for both interns and university grad positions, we do list the skills that we're looking for in each job description under the minimum qualifications. That's actually the exact, as cliche as this sounds, that's actually the exact criteria that we go off of. So specifically, it will ask for relevant internships, experience, or projects. And then on top of that, I would also personally suggest that you include any relevant courses that you've taken throughout your undergrad or just master's program. And then additionally, under that job description, there's also the preferred qualifications. Those are not mandatory in any way, but if you do possess those skills and experience, I'd highly recommend adding that onto your resume just to help your profile stand out against other candidates.
And that's a good tip always, right? Reading that job description, seeing where it aligns and incorporating the language so that it matches where relevant, right? And,
exactly.
And really being smart about having different versions of your resume so that it aligns with the particular job really is a good advice in general. And that's for any job, not just with Meta, of course. What about insider advice, right? Anything that you would say, you know, that you're talking around your office around, oh, I wish this candidate had X, you know, what's kind of the insider advice that you could give to a student who's thinking, I want to apply for a role at Meta as they're heading into graduation?
I'm sure like you'll see a theme with just what we say in terms of prepping is practice and actually reviewing the jobs. I think come across a lot of candidates who then circle back and regret not taking the time to read the docs or just taking the time to practice because they think that they're just going to wing it and do well, but that's unfortunately not the case. And then, like I mentioned, just reviewing algorithms and data structures, those are the main themes that we evaluate against on and that we focus on. And then the communication aspect. I don't think a lot of engineers get to practice on a day-to-day and speaking out loud, and it may be uncomfortable for them. So I would highly recommend not even practicing with a friend. I personally feel like if I practice with a friend, I don't take it as seriously as I would in a real interview. So creating an atmosphere where you really feel like you're in an interview, which is where PREMP, that resource, would come in.
So taking it a little bit more seriously, and even utilizing an advisor, say in our career center, right, is a good idea, because you might be a little bit more prepared. You come in and feel a little bit more formal about the interview process by talking to them. No, that's good advice. How about you for you, Paul?
Nothing specific on the resume. I think try to highlight yourself in the best way possible. And I think that means a different thing to every single person. So it's hard to give a broad reaching. If every single person has the same thing on their interview, no one's going to stand out. So there's not one thing that we can say to really make your resume stand out more than others. It's really, at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to you highlighting your personal your traits and how you want to put your best foot forward. Yeah.
Knowing yourself, right, to be able to kind of speak to that during the interview process, and everybody has something different to share, I think, right? Has something unique and interesting that makes you different. So those things can stand out in a positive light in the process. So that's a good advice.
One thing to add on there is I think as a college student, everyone's taking very similar courses, so it's hard for you to think that there's something unique about yourself. But I guarantee you that once you step into full-time, your uniqueness, you start to realize that all that time that you spent at school, you now have infinite freedom to do anything you want. And with that infinite choice, you start to express yourself a lot more and really grow into yourself. And so I think that's the reason why just showing who you are as an individual is good enough of a step.
No, that's great. And kind of heading into the last question with both of you, you know, as you think about yourselves as professionals, right, in your various roles, you know, what's the best advice that you feel, as you've been a professional so far, from a friend, a mentor? You know, what was that advice that you got that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I'd say don't give up and don't let anyone discourage you. Job searching in itself is a full-time position, and it could feel discouraging at first when you're constantly getting rejected, but I promise that there's going to be a role out there in a company for you, regardless if it's Meta or somewhere else, that it's going to work out for you. At Meta specifically, I would say a lot of our employees took multiple attempts at interviews before landing a role here, myself included. I started off with applications like third-party vendors, referrals, and then it finally just worked out in the end. So I just wanted to let everyone know that just keep in mind that even though it doesn't work out the first, second, or third time, that it doesn't necessarily mean that will be the case in the near future. So just keep trying.
Persistence is key. How about you, Paul?
Yeah, huge plus one on that. Just keep trying. I think at this point, I interviewed at Meta a couple times before the full-time position, and I definitely got rejected multiple times. The fact that I don't even remember now means how insignificant those rejections actually are. It may seem really much like the whole world to you, like, I'm never getting into this company. But even when you step into full-time and you don't get into the company you want, there are many, many paths for you in the future to get to, maybe not Meta. I mean, maybe Meta doesn't have to be your ultimate, like the ultimate landing spot, but to wherever you end up wanting to be, there are many, many paths to getting there. So don't feel discouraged when you get rejected. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't hold a bearing on your life in terms of where you will end up in a few years in time. So I think that's huge. I would say the biggest thing that I've had to do in my professional career is really holding a sense of identity. I think really don't lose and don't let go of that sense of identity. I think every single person at some point will feel the need, or many points in time will feel the need to conform to the status quo, what they think is the status quo of the company. But in reality, the status quo is made up of you plus others. So you are actually defining what status quo is. And so it's super important to make sure you're not letting that go. And so what that doesn't mean is it's not giving you an excuse to not grow and learn from mistakes, but it really simply means that you can, one, grow, but you can also make impact to your team, to your company in your individual style. It will very much be a unique journey that you end up going on. So that's the ultimate thing that I think is so important.
Oh, that's so great. Great advice, great wisdom for our students. I want to thank both of you for spending some time with us and sharing this information. I think it will be really valuable to our soon-to-be graduates and our students in general. And we will have this up on our Career Center website soon in the coming days, along with the resources that we mentioned earlier. But I can't thank you enough, Bernice and Paul, for spending time with us, and thank you again.
Cool. Thanks for having us. This is great.
Of course.
Thank you.